I want to take this time to call the Metropolitan Transit Commission meeting of Wednesday, August the 23rd, 2023 to order. It is 5:30 and we've got a great agenda to go through, so hopefully everyone is prepared and ready. Does anybody need any materials? Russ, did you get? Okay, got it. Okay. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to those watching live via our streaming platforms, and thank you for joining us as well. I'm calling this meeting to order. We're going to get started with introductions by the voting members, and we're going to do this a little bit differently because we found that we spent a lot of time trying to do this in a way that was probably not as efficient as what I would hope to have tonight. But if we could start with Mayor Bales and come around for the voting members to acknowledge be introduced.
I am here. Belinda Bales.
Okay.
Brad Simmons, Mayor of Mint Hill.
Jack Edwards, Mayor of Pineville.
Lee Altman, Mecklenburg County Commissioner serving at large.
John Higdon, Mayor of Matthews.
Vi Lyles, Mayor of Charlotte.
Rusty Knox, Mayor of Davidson.
Andrew Grant, Town Manager for Cornelius, filling in for Mayor Washington.
Tony Lathrop, NCDOT, Division 10.
All right, thank you very much. And so now we would like to have our non-voting members who represent parts of the region to introduce themselves. So if when you're doing this, if for the record, please say your first and last name, your title, and your jurisdiction.
Bill Thunberg, representative for Mooresville.
Anthony Roberts, Town Manager, Huntersville.
Andy Christie, Deputy Transit Director of Concord, Kannapolis Area Transit.
Mayor Reed, I think we're going to recognize you now.
Walker Reed, Mayor of City of Gastonia.
You did a great job today on Charlotte Talks. Thanks so much for doing that. Okay, so now we will start with our advisory board representatives.
Hello, my name is Jared Herbs. I am the co-chair of TSEC.
All right. So the TSEC is going to be giving us a report this afternoon. So thank you, everyone. I think that this shows that we can do this in a more efficient way. And is there anyone that I should have recognized that I did not? If non-voting, advisory, voting, everybody's good. Okay, thank you very much. So I really appreciate it. So moving forward, our next item is the approval of our meeting minutes. The minutes are on page 5 through 15 in the briefing book. Is there a motion to approve the July 26, 2023 minutes?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or any comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the voting members in adopting the minutes, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Our next item are public comments. We have 2 speakers tonight, and we will follow our practice. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the MTC, and we'll start with Mark Moore. Mr. Moore. If you'll come to the podium up here, and that mic should work easily. Hopefully, the mic should work.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Mayors, Mr. Cagle, Mr. Lawrence, and everyone else with cats. Thank you for letting me be here today. So I'm here today to kind of talk about reliability and frequency. I know this has been sort of a big topic recently in discussing cats and where we are now and where we hope to go. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence, coming over to talk to me earlier. And thank you, Mr. Cagle, and everyone else on the team for all of the hard work you guys have been doing. I do understand that CATS is in a very difficult situation right now, and that at this point in time, the staffing shortage does make it necessary to an extent to focus on reliability. But that said, I just wanted to come and kind of reemphasize that the end goal needs to be working towards returning to some degree of frequency. I want to emphasize it's very good that we have it where buses aren't overfull or leaving people at stops. And that's a good metric to look at. But part of the reason why that's happening is because there are people who at 15 minutes would have waited for the next bus, and at 30 minutes, call an Uber, a Lyft, call a friend to get a ride some other way that they know they need to get to work on time. And other riders are simply not riding at all. Similar to the concept of adding highway lanes, inducing additional traffic, adding service on core routes tends to bring increased ridership,
Stevie over here.
that away does, and for taking that away often kind of does the reverse. I also want to note that reliability actually has a greater impact on the rider when frequency is low. To put in perspective, one dropped bus on a every 30 minutes frequency is a 60-minute wait, while two back-to-back drop buses on a every 15-minute bus is a 45-minute wait. So that can actually, so when there's lower frequency, any hit to reliability can be significantly larger. And as someone who rides every day of the week, sometimes that's reality, especially on weekends. Now that said, I do understand all of this is going to take time. I've been encouraged to see that the gap in operators has been improving thanks to you all's hard work. I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that at the end, everything needs to be handled sort of with the underlying goal of returning to reliable and frequent. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Believe you, in so many ways, you have really stated what our goal is, to get back the ridership to the level that we can have buses full and ready to go. So, but we acknowledge right now that it is difficult for a number of reasons, primarily things that we'll hear from our interim CEO. So, but thank you for coming down tonight and always reminding us how important the system is to this community. Our second speaker is Jerica? Sorry.
Okay, I'm used to it.
Well, that doesn't make it right, so, okay. Jerica Tate, please.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me again. So I would just like to discuss the CATS app. As you guys know, I am a rider. I take the bus 16, the Route 16 from where I live. But I've noticed that when I try to use the app, there's conflicting messages, like the information published on the app versus on the web does not match up. The information, for example, on August 15th, a couple weeks ago, or about a week ago, I was taking, I believe it was 62X. I'm sorry. Yeah, so I was taking a bus down to Providence Road. I believe it's 62 or 61X. But on the app, it stated I believe it was the app that stated I needed to be on 3rd and Brevard to catch the bus. But then on the web, it stated 3rd and McDowell. So when I tried to catch it from 3rd and McDowell, there was no stop. So there's conflicting messages there. And then I also came across an app called Move It. And so I don't know if you guys are working with, if CATS is working with Move It. That's a third-party company. It seems like that information being published on Move It is a lot more accurate than what's on the CATS website in the app. So I would just like to just bring this to your attention and see what we can do to, at least have the same information across the board, because it's very confusing when you're trying to utilize the CATS app and web compared to Move It, which is another third-party company that seems to be a little more reliable.
Well,
So.
thank you, Ms. Tate.
Thank you.
We're going to ask our fearless leader, Brent Cagle, to look into this, especially on the third party, because how they're using our data, and how does that interface with what we want to do to make sure that the app works. So thank you for pointing this out for us. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right, now we'll have an update from the Transit Work Group between Mayor Bales and Mayor Higdon.
I think I'm going to take it this time. Thank you, Mayor Lyles. We met on August 8th, and the meeting materials are in your packet more in detail. We started with the CE report. Mr. Cagle gave us the August progress report and told us about the Gold Line headways that will be modified from 20 minutes to 30 minutes to provide customers with more reliable service delivery. We also had a review of the financial management oversight update. The FMO is an off-cycle financial and maintenance review performed by the FTA as a result of a request from the city manager in March. Phase 1, the assessment phase of the full scope system review, is complete, and Phase 2, the testing phase, will be performed in late August and September. In the third phase, the FTA will publish a draft report of their findings, and it is expected to be completed in the late fall. We also had an update on risk and control self-assessment. CATS is working with management partners Baker Tilly to perform the department's risk and control self-assessment. The review will address several high-risk categories, including service, delivery, asset management, third-party physical security, information security, technology, financial, human resources, regulatory compliance, and strategic risks. And CATS will use these findings to identify risk, develop plans to improve and build out work plans, and develop KPIs. The assessment should be finalized in the fall. Findings will be used to develop the strategy and budget for the fiscal year 2025 and determine where to prioritize the department's investments. I think this discussion had a lot to do with this group in being more transparent, particularly with the delivery of regular reporting on KPIs, or key performance indicators. Our next meeting of the City Council MTC Working Group will be on September 12th.
All right.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mayor Higdon or Mayor Bales? All right.
I'm not sure because my computer decided to reboot just as we were beginning this. And so I don't have the agenda pulled up, but in the agenda, there's like a graph with updates on some of the problems. Is that where we are in the agenda right now? Because if so, I did have 2 clarifying questions, or is that to come still?
I think that's later in the agenda. This
Okay.
is just specifically the work from the working group.
Okay, so that right page is not where we are. You're right.
On this page here,
On the right.
on this,
Yeah, we're not there yet?
we are here.
Okay.
This is the progress identified from the CATS Oversight and Remediation Report.
Great, then I do have 2
All right,
questions.
thank you.
So I believe with that graph, which again, unfortunately, I don't have pulled up at the moment, it has a note regarding the July 28th derailment as human error. And I was wondering, Mr. Cagle, if you could just update us a little more what that means and what y'all determined.
Yes. So as part of the progress report, July 28th, 2023, which occurred just after the July MTC meeting, there was a derailment in the yard. Again, derailment is an industry term. It does not indicate the severity of the incident in any way, shape, or form. It just is an industry term referring to the fact that a wheel left its natural position on the track. This was not a severe incident. It was a derailment. However, it occurred in the yard as an operator was moving the train as part of service, and I believe as part of their pullout, or the morning, leaving the yard in the morning. But it occurred in the yard, and the operator in industry, I guess, sort of technical jargon, they were splitting tracks they were switching tracks, and they split the switch. They did not fully engage the switch gear, and that led the train to right up over the rail. So when it says it was human error, that's what it means. The operator did not fully engage the switch gear. It does occur more often than we would like. And so we know the cause, a human error or operator error. But in response to that, we have also, our ops group is looking at routine retraining for the specific operator involved, but also annual retraining of the appropriate way to switch tracks for all operators. But again, that's what we mean by that. This one was, the operator just did not fully engage the switch gear as they were switching tracks.
Thank you. And then also on that graph, I believe it says the financial management focus review is going to conclude in October of this year. Mr. Higdon was just referring to that. So for my clarification, so the FTA is doing an operational review and a financial review, is that right?
So they have announced that they will do financial management oversight or FMO review. That has begun, and they will do an operations and maintenance review. That has not begun yet, but the FTA tells us that they are close to selecting a contractor to do that. And once they have done that, the contractor will reach out to us to do, in effect, an opening conference or launch the review. Each review goes through the same process, and it's roughly a 3 to 4 month process, starting with assessment, moving on to testing, and then you move into a review of the draft report. And so the FMO has started, and we would expect to move into the draft report review sometime in late September, October timeframe.
Thank you. And then we're not, I don't think we're to the part of the agenda where you've got the metrics over the last month, so I'll hold my remaining questions unless we're there.
We are very close.
Okay.
I have just a couple other
Thank you.
updates on the progress report. If you'd like me to go ahead and give those, I can.
Well, I think the question is that our next step was going to be your interim report, and so I think if you want to go in the order that the commissioners asked for, that would be appropriate.
Yes, absolutely. So communications to MTC, as Mayor Higdon pointed out, after the last MTC meeting, and also via email, but not at the last MTC meeting, we announced that due to staffing issues, we have moved the Gold Line headways from 20 minutes to 30 minutes. That was effective last weekend on Saturday. We hope that over the next roughly 4 months, as we're seeing increasing new recruits in classes, that we will be able to resume the 20-minute headways on Gold Line. We think it's about 4 months, but it's staffing contingent. What I will say is we do have vacancies for rail operators. So rail operators are trained. There are not Gold Line operators and Blue Line operators. There are operators. There are rail operators. And because of the vacancies, the other thing we find is because of special events, which usually necessitate additional service on the Blue Line, additional cars, it's a push-pull effect. As we have high vacancies and more needs for special event service, it creates a shortage on the Gold Line. So we've moved headways to 30 minutes. As the gentleman said before, it's not an either or when it comes to reliability and frequency, and we know that it's both and we know that keys to good transit service, whether it's on the rail or the bus, needs to be frequent and reliable. And so right now, we're pulling down frequency where we have to be able to maintain reliability, and we do intend to get back to more frequency. Just very quickly, my last update is status of NCDOT. So again, NCDOT, it is routine, it is part of their role to conduct both announced and unannounced inspections. Those have been going very well. Over the last month, there have been 2 announced inspections on 3 areas. The first area was in our maintenance of way group. They came out and did an announced inspection on the routine reports that they write up. They also did an inspection of the light rail vehicle pullout procedures. That's when they leave the yard in the morning to start service. And then they did what we call a high rail inspection, which is a visual inspection of the track inside of a vehicle, inside of a high rail vehicle. So they ride the entire alignment and inspect the track. There were no findings. They did have a few recommendations for how we can be more clear in our reporting related to the MOW track inspections, but no findings in those 3 areas. With that, we can move right over into communications. So again, we have provided some communications to MTC related to a special event, the Beyonce concert. It was a great special event for the region.
So did you go?
I did not, although I know some of my team did, and they said it was very good. But Beyonce concert was interesting in that on a typical Wednesday, we would see ridership of about 16,000. On Beyonce Wednesday, I'm going to call it that from here on out probably, it was more like about 26,000. So special events do create much higher ridership, especially along the Blue Line, and that's great. It's exciting for the community, but also for CATS to be able to handle that kind of increase in traffic. We don't have numbers on Pride weekend last weekend, but I'm sure the ridership numbers were significantly increased over the weekend as well. We talked about Gold Line, and then we also have our standard metrics or reporting information as part of that, as part of the background information. So I'll pause there and see if there are specific questions related to the information.
Commissioner?
Thank you. So on page 27 of the agenda, I know we get these metrics every month, but I'm trying to be sure I understand. So can you just tell me what is BOD preventable collisions? It looks like there were 4 preventable collisions that were more than $500 in damages. Is that what that means?
That is exactly right. So these 4 measures, we utilize these 4 measures because these are 4 primary measures that the FTA requires us to report on. BOD fatalities is pretty self-explanatory, or fatalities. We do these 4 measures for bus operations, STS, Special Transportation Services, Blue Line and Gold Line. So fatalities, preventables is just that after the investigation, if it was determined that it was a preventable collision, it's ruled that way versus an unpreventable. The operator was parked and someone ran into the back of the bus, which happened last month. But that would be an unpreventable. Reportable injuries is just that. And then system reliability tracks the number of incidences when a vehicle had to be taken out of service while in service. It broke down.
So without diving down into the specifics, can you give me just a better idea of what preventable collisions, more than $500 in damage, 4 of them, what that looks like? And, similarly, 107 reliability incidents, like are these, I'm trying to get a sense of how significant these things are, because they sound significant, but we don't ever talk about them, as well as 13 major reportable injuries. Like, I have no idea what that actually means.
Yeah, if you'd like, we can pull together some more documentation and send it to the full MTC. What you'll see, so preventable collisions over $500, that could be everything from an operator ran into a curb and blew out a tire and bent a rim, right? That would be $500 more, damage if it was preventable. Or they were taking a corner and it was a very tight and they brushed a vehicle next to it, or hit the mirror type of thing, or brushed the side of the bus. So it could be those kinds of things, but we can get you more information. One thing I'll say about reportable injuries, so the interesting, or putting context around that number, when you see the spikes, that is not always, but usually attributable to one accident of a bus full of people. So what that is indicative of in July, again, that one might have been when a bus was at a stop. There were, it looks like 13 passengers on board plus a driver, and someone ran, in July, I think someone ran straight through and head-on collision with the bus. And so medics arrive and people they say, I'm injured, I need to be checked out. These are not necessarily major injuries, but that's why you see that spiking is one incident like that can lead to a spike because it's indicative of one bus getting hit while it's fully loaded.
Thank you. So when you follow up, another metric I'll be interested to just learn a little more about is the special transportation service, since those were probably more, folks who have mobility issues and, a higher level of care certainly we need to be thinking about. And lastly, can you address the Human Services Transport Department of Social Services, a 7,000% increase in the last month? I just want to make sure, if that involves Mecklenburg County, that, if there's anything I need to be doing around that. That was a pretty big metric.
Yeah, so it is large on a percentage basis. Some of that is on a small base. The increase percentage-wise looks very big, but we can dig into that to see what the difference was and give you more information. Sometimes I believe that these are the types of trips attributable to the county MTS service. And so just as background, CATS provides STS, or Special Transportation Services, and the county provides a service called MTS. They are similar but not the same. And there are times when the county, either budgetary constraints or just manpower issues, when they need help, they'll give us a call and we gladly help them out. And so it might have been, let me get some more information and see if that's what happened is they gave us a call and asked for help. And so this would be an odd month in that we were doing more of those transports to assist the county.
Thank you, Mr. Cagle.
Yeah.
Quick follow-up,
Yes,
Just-
Mr. Lathrop?
maybe just for context. It would seem to me that if you have, I don't know the number, thousands of bus trips every month, that statistically you're going to have a certain number of issues like that, and that, that 1 month may vary slightly, but over time that, it's fairly, I don't know what the word is, predictable, but that, it's just a function of numbers. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and we do have metrics that we look at beyond just the number of occurrences, which is what we have here, number of occurrences. We also have metrics that break it down on a per mile basis or to sort of gauge, because the truth is preventable accidents, we'd like it to be 0 every month.
Sure.
We know the reality of servicing, hundreds of thousands, millions of passengers and that many miles annually, monthly and annually. Those things will happen. And so we do look at it from raw numbers, but we also have a metric that we look at to see, to gauge what our response needs to be.
And I assume that we are in line with whatever the acceptable ranges and averages are, right?
Yeah, we are in line with the acceptable ranges. The one area that we want to continue improving on, well, 2 areas, but same thing. When you look at Bus Operations Division reliability and STS reliability, those are not as good as we want them to be. And that is, quite frankly, a function of an aging fleet in both instances. But we have already implemented strategies, which is buying new buses, to help bring us back into alignment with that measure. Those two measures, because our STS fleet needs to be fully replaced as well. We've talked about the bus fleet. The STS fleet also needs to be fully replaced. And we have an aggressive strategy to replace our bus fleet and our STS fleet to bring that metric back down. But we do routinely see in reliability on the bus and STS fleet, it is not, we have more breakdowns than we would want.
I think it might be a good idea. I don't know how many of us know what STS does and how much it does in the community, and it would be very helpful. I think they have drivers that have really worked hard with individuals that need the service. It may be good to just have a presentation on how it operates and works, because I have a neighborhood that has service there, and what they do is remarkable. I mean, from your doorstep to that vehicle, and it is not an easy job. And so I would love to have us actually, I know the fleet definitely needs replacement. We've acknowledged that. But I tell you, the service is invaluable for people, especially on dialysis, people that have to go to the hospital, all of those things that we are trying to accomplish. So at some point, maybe it's just a moment to say, this is what this group does.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. I will say another note about STS. Our operators for STS, it's a hard job, and they do a great job. STS is routinely, from an STS customer standpoint, our highest rated service. It has, I think the last report we had from the customers was something like a 98% approval rating, and that the customers who use it. Now, what I will say about STS, usually when we hear complaints about STS, it is not from our customers. It's from people who want to be our customers but are just outside of the area or aren't serviced. But for our customers, there's a high degree of satisfaction. The other thing I'll say, and this is true in the industry, our STS drivers, before I came to CATS, our STS drivers they did not have pay parity with the bus operators, the full-size bus operators. We have changed that. That is also part of our pay strategy to provide parity to them. Because while they're not driving a full-size bus, they're doing so much more for the community, other things that full-size bus operators don't have to do. So we have created parity in their pay as a strategy to retain and recruit STS operators.
Any other questions or comments for your report, Mr. Cagle?
No, ma'am.
All right, well, thank you. So we're now going to move to the informational items, and we'll have a 2023 Title VI program update by Orlando Rouse, and I believe that complete update is in our document.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the MTC. My name is Orlando Rouse, and I'm the CATS Civil Rights Officer. So today I'm going to give you an update on the CATS Title VI program. And I'm going to describe the purpose of the program, the objectives, some of the CATS policies, our Title VI complaints, and what's called our Limited English Proficiency Program, which is a part of our Title VI program. Next slide. So what is Title VI? Title VI is Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It states that no person in the United States shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from or participation in any program that receives federal assistance. CATS is a recipient of federal funds, so we're required to have a Title VI program to ensure that we're not discriminating based upon race, color, or national origin. Next slide. So our Title VI program, it must be submitted to the FTA every 3 years. It requires a governing body or board of directors approval. They must be made aware and they consider and approve the program. The program is due to the FTA within 60 days of its expiration date. Next slide. So the objectives of the CATS Title VI program is to ensure that the quality of transportation service is provided in a non-discriminatory manner. We must promote full and fair participation in transportation without regard to race, color, or national origin. And we want to ensure that our services are provided to people with limited English proficiency. So one of the ways we do this within our Title VI program is we monitor the distribution of things within our system. One of the things that we monitor the distribution of are our amenities. The slide which are currently being shown, this is the current amenities distribution within our system. They're shown as the exact numbers for each of these items, and they're not shown as a group. So by that, anytime we have a shelter, we know there's a bench, there's a trash can on each of the shelters, but we're showing these as separate items. So within our service area, there are 2,930 stops. We've broken our system down into service areas of minority, limited English proficiency, and low income in order to determine the distribution of our stops. The distribution of our amenities. And as you can see at the table at the bottom, the majority of our benches, shelters, and trash cans, they are along our minority tracks. Our limited English proficiency customers, they have at least 50% of our stops, our benches, and our shelters, and low income, they all exceed 50% also. Next slide. Next, we're going to discuss what's called our service change policies. So anytime there's a service change or there's a fare change, we evaluate it. The criteria we use is what's called a major service change. So we don't evaluate all changes as Title VI. It's only when it's considered a major service change or a fare change. So what we define as a major service change is any change to our existing bus or light rail service that affects more than 25% of the revenue miles, revenue hours, or the passengers along that route. If we eliminate any transit route without replacement, that's considered a major service change. Or anytime we have a new service route, we consider that a major service change. And all of those things will be evaluated for Title VI compliance. Next slide. What we consider a fare change. Anytime there's a change in passenger fares for the organization, we consider that a fare change. Or anytime we change the type of fare media being utilized, we consider that a fare change. There are some key definitions. We're going to discuss these more in our next presentation. But our key definitions as it relates to Title VI, there's disparate impact, disproportionate burden, low income, and minority. As far as the disparate impact, that's a fiscally neutral policy or practice that disproportionately affects members of race, by race, color, or national origin. And it's when a recipient's policy or practice legitimately lacks justification, or if there are one or more alternatives. We're going to discuss that more in our next presentation. Disproportionate burden, go back please. Disproportionate burden is when a neutral policy or practice affects low-income communities more than non-low-income communities. This usually comes into effect whenever we're discussing a fare change. Next slide. Next slide. Next, we're going to discuss what's called our Title VI Complaint Resolutions Program. So when you have a Title VI policy, you're going to have complaints. The complaints are usually going to have something for either race, color, or national origin. How CATS fields complaints is we train our customer service staff that anytime a passenger or a customer mentions anything with one of those keywords, race, color, or national origin, please send it to us for review. Now, so the complaints must be filed within 180 days of occurrence, and we have 90 days to actually address the complaint, and we have to have instructions for the appeal. The appeals will be submitted to the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., and those addresses and things are found on the complaint form. Next slide. So over the last 3 years, we had 11 complaints as they relate to Title VI. By 11 complaints, that's anytime a passenger would call in, they was like, hey, I think that I was treated wrong based upon something dealing with race. We'll review it. Or some type of disparate treatment based upon national origin. We'll review that. Or if there was something based upon color. We had 11 of those complaints. We did not have any of those complaints upheld for one reason or another. Passengers wouldn't call us back, or we found that even though they mentioned the complaint may have been racially motivated, it was really a basic customer service complaint, and the passenger may have simply just said it was it was based upon race. Next slide. The final element of our Title VI program is our limited English proficiency program. This is where the federal government requires us to have meaningful access to individuals with a limited English proficiency. So what I'll do is just describe, next slide, some of the ways that we accomplish this. So our current CATS website translates it into over 90 languages. The City of Charlotte has 6 language services contracts that we're able to utilize. We have bilingual staffers in our CATS Customer Service Center, as well as our 311 call centers. CATS has multilingual supervisors to assist. CATS drivers have a book of common phrases to use on board their vehicles. And finally, all of our key documents, what I call our vital documents, they translate into multiple languages, or they're pre-translated into multiple languages. So with that, that concludes the portion of our Title VI program overview. Do you have any questions?
I just wondered if you expected us to pass the language test from pages 70 or to...
Those are just some of our pre-translated forms that I was describing. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so, okay. Mr. Mayor Higdon. Oh, and I want to welcome Councilmember Ed Driggs to our meeting.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm late.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Rouse. You talked about the amenity percentages, and I wonder if there's a passing grade. I mean, what is, you show?
Well, currently within our service area, we're just using census tract. So within our service area states that 49% of our service area consists of minority passengers, and 11.8% of our service areas are low income. If you look at our amenities distribution, it exceeds both of those. That's why I briefly mentioned the 50%, so I apologize for not expanding on that further.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Driggs.
Just a quick comment. Did you say there were 11 complaints over 3 years system-wide? Yes, sir. Is that what they... I just think it's worth highlighting. That's extraordinary, right? I think CATS deserves to be commended for having avoided in the national environment that we're in a greater incidence of those. So kudos. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate this, Mr. Rouse, the work that's done. I was just saying to Mayor Higdon, it is a complex process that you have to follow, and we're grateful that we're able to do that, and for your service in making it possible for us to have this kind of information. So with that, I believe that we are now having no further questions here. We're going to move to our only action item of the, I'm sorry, we have one more. Title VI Service Equity Analysis?
Service adjustments.
Service adjustments, sorry. Keep on going, Mr. Rouse, it's all
Yes, Madam
yours.
Mayor. What I'm going to present to you now is back in August of 2022, you've heard over the past year, you've heard Mr. Lawrence give you updates upon our service adjustments and the improvements of service. So I just gave you our Title VI definition that no person shall be discriminated because of race, color, or national origin. And in 2022, we made service adjustments. Next slide. When we made those service adjustments, we have a Title VI definition of what a minority is. So CATS currently defines minorities as a person that's non-white, non-Hispanic, and a low-income person is defined as a person whose median household income is below the poverty level for the Health and Human Services. Next slide. These two definitions that I just described to you in the previous presentation, one is disparate impact, and the second is our disparate impact threshold. The disparate impact threshold is going to come into play in this particular analysis. So whenever we made a change that we considered a major service change, we had to evaluate the impact upon the populations within that bus route. And our current threshold is 49.5% for minority. That is our service area, that's our service area percentage, and 11.8% low income. That is the percentage of low-income individuals within our service area. So anytime there's a change to any of our services and it exceeds these thresholds, we evaluate to make sure that it is not negatively affecting the minority or the low-income community within those areas of change. Next slide. So on August 15, 2022, we made bus route changes. Because those changes have lasted longer than 12 months, the FTA considered those changes permanent, even though CATS does not necessarily consider those changes permanent, because as we get more operators, we're going to slowly restore service. So because those changes last longer than 12 months, we are required to perform a Title VI analysis as a result of those changes. Next slide. So what did we change? So what we changed we changed the frequency of 11 bus routes, and we discontinued underutilized late night service on 9 of our bus routes. And we did this as a way to increase our reliability and to ensure that our passengers, they had more reliable service and they had more predictable service. So that was the reason for our changes. And you've heard the results of those changes over the past 12 months. Next slide, please. So the very first thing we evaluated were our service hours. So when we reviewed all of our bus routes, we had to make a determination of which bus routes were changed more than 25% and would be classified as a major service change. We identified 9 bus routes. There were no changes to weekend service. These were only weekday service routes changes. So we identified 9 of those bus routes, and they ranged from a little bit over 25% up to 44% in terms of changes in terms of service hours. Next, we want to identify changes in revenue miles for bus routes. When we identified which routes changed more than 25%, we identified 8 bus routes. The only difference between this list and the list that we saw previously is that the Route 10 was excluded from this list because it did not quite reach the threshold of 25%. It was 24.88, but it didn't quite reach 25, so we left that out. There was no change in weekend mileage also as a result of our changes over the past year. Next slide. So as we identify all of our bus routes, what's shown on the screen now are the 9 routes that were identified. We had to make a determination about whether those routes actually travel through a low income service area or a minority designated service area. All of the routes, 8 of the routes, travel through either a low income service area or minority service area. The only one that did not was our Davison shuttle, which is the 290. Next slide. So because of that, we had to make a determination regarding the impact of our changes. So what we determined was that a higher percentage of low-income minority passengers utilized the 8 of the 9 bus routes, and they were identified as having a major service change. The bus routes were changed because the service was deemed to be unreliable, and we have frequent passenger complaints because of the unreliable service because of the operator shortage. What we also found is that our changes resulted in a higher number of passengers per hour on each of the bus routes. And finally, those changes, even though there was a higher number of passengers per hour, we also found that none of our bus routes after the changes reached capacity, so none of the passengers were actually being left as a result of those changes into higher capacities. Next slide. So in summary, we had to ask the question, was there a disparate impact due to the frequency changes of our bus routes? So if we would have done nothing, we would have continued to provide unreliable service to the low-income minority communities on 8 of those bus routes. Would that non-change, would that be more detrimental than the change that we made with less frequency? We made the determination that the change was actually more beneficial to the low-income minority community because they had more reliable and more predictable service. So the change actually served in this particular instance, it was almost an addition by subtraction is the way we saw the change. So we found that a review of the changes by reducing the service to a low-income and minority bus routes, they had more reliable and predictable service. As we evaluated those changes, we wanted to know, since we have less frequent service, we heard passengers say the buses are now more full. Are passengers being left, and are there crush loads on the buses? We did not find that passengers were being left as a result of buses reaching capacity or crush loading of buses. Next slide. So, do we have any questions regarding the 2022 changes for
Any
August?
questions regarding the equity analysis, service equity analysis?
Okay.
I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for all of the work that you've been doing to make this happen, to bring this to us.
Okay.
It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Now we will move to our action item of the night of this meeting. Mr. Makowicz will provide an overview of the CATS Agency Safety Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the MTC. I bring to you today revision 3 of our agency safety plan. We're asking for a motion for of a review and acceptance of the plan. What I'm going to do is very briefly go over some of the main changes that have occurred. We did send out the ASP to you earlier this month in order to make it easier for you to review. We highlighted all of the changes in red font, so anything in red would be considered a change. Just so to, if you could go to the, oh, thanks. He's now messing with me. Up one more. To beginning. Okay. All right, go ahead, next slide. So as you see here, we made general edits to the document throughout. I'm just trying to implement some things that we had completed last year or this year that is in place as opposed to something we were working on last year. So that's sort of that language change. Next slide, please. We added and updated some definitions. This is in compliance with FTA as well as the State Safety Oversight Program standard. We updated those definitions as well. Next slide, please. We have updated our purpose and scope section. What we did was just clarify the NCDOT's ability to have announced and unannounced inspections, specifying specifically that we do maintain our SMS ASP documentation for at least 3 years, as well as ensuring that NCDOT has a notification within 24 hours of any communication related to safety to any of our federal or state partners. Thank you. Next. Under section 1.2.2, what we have done is, as was talked about earlier, we had the National Safety Plan, our 4 primary goals that we monitor and provide metrics to. What we identified during last year was, as we've been talking about at this meeting in past, is the just new environment that we're operating in. And we found that our objective measurements were not in line with our current environment and our operations, meaning we were holding metrics to higher numbers of miles, for instance, when we were operating less miles. So to ensure we have a more accurate measurement, we have realigned to the current operating posture that we have. Next slide. Under these sections here, basically what we were adding is more description of inventory management. We have separated and identified key positions. As you know, a new org chart was provided. So as we're realigning, we're just realigning the ASP to identify those positions, as well as describing that CATS now has a SMS team, safety management system team, that is comprised of 1 senior safety coordinator and 3 safety coordinators. That their primary focus is the implementation and management of the agency safety plan and SMS. Next slide, please. These other sections here, 17, 24, and 25, just talking about contacting NCDOT, updating some definitions of corrective action plans, some additional reports, and just updated language on trend analysis. Next slide, please. These sections here talk about clarifying our final audit reports will be sent to NCDOT 60 days after our audit meeting is closed. Section 3.3 talks about the state of good repair in our transit and asset management program and how we're working providing that information, as well as, again, just looking at cleaning up some definitions of a corrective action plan. Next slide, please. These sections here talk about requiring CATS employees to have a direct liaison with NCDOT on major projects, so NCDOT can get updates. We've added language to NCDOT regarding some summary reports based on updates that they made in their State Safety Oversight Program standard. And we clarified some requirements that contractors are to comply with while on CATS and working with CATS. Next slide, please. In this section here for the hours of service, we clarified hours of service for during emergencies, as well as notifying NCDOT when those emergencies occur and an hours of service has to adjust. Any questions?
All right. Mayor Higdon.
I don't have a question. I just have a comment on the metrics where we have goals set. I think somewhere in the safety plan, it should be implicitly said that our goal is zero safety.
That is in the appendix, sir.
It is,
so
okay, very
we
good.
define in the agency safety plan what those metrics or the definition of the goal is. In the appendices is where we have the specific numbers that we have. So that allows us, as the environment changes, as we get back more service or running more miles, we can make adjustments to the measurements. Instead of having to come back and have the whole plan approved, we can just update those metrics, and then, which of course will be reported to you all and show you the changes as they occur. So that is ongoing, and that is specifically in those appendices, those numbers.
Very good. I must admit, I didn't read the minutia of the appendices.
No problem, sir.
Thank you.
Really?
Appreciate that.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I attempted to read the minutia, but it was really hard to process it. And so my question is, you know, like, we're going to vote on this. We're going to approve. There's going to be a motion to approve this. And, like, I can't really assess most of this because it's at a technical level. It's just far above what I can kind of give any meaningful input or oversight to. So, I mean, are all these changes consistent with what, like, the FTA has asked you to do, or DOT? Like, where did you get all these changes that we are blessing this evening?
Sure. So a lot of the changes are occurring with working with NCDOT. They've updated their state safety oversight program standards. Other changes have come because we have been, mind you, this is revision 3, so we've been implementing SMS in the agency safety plan over the last few years. So a lot of those changes, or the majority of those changes too, are things that we said we would do that we are now doing. Like we said we would have a SMS team. Well, we now have an SMS team. So the language changes as to what we plan to do versus what we're doing now. How we're doing something or what we plan to do, we're doing it now. So that's where those changes come from. And then a small portion is just from updates from FTA, from safety advisories and stuff. But a majority is working with NCDOT, State Safety Oversight, and just cleaning the document to their changes in their program standards, making sure we're incorporating them in our plan, as well as I said, the updates, things that we're now implemented that were at the past we were working on.
Okay, so it's fair to say that all the changes were mandated by the FTA or DOT. Is that fair?
To some extent, yes, ma'am.
They weren't mandated. Let me back up a little bit. Some of the changes are just definitional, right? So as we work through the last year, we see that there's a definition, or NCDOT sees that there's a definition that could be clarified. Corrective action plans or CAPs or those kinds of things. So they're definitional, and it's just a fine tuning of the document. Others are specific. FTA says you need to add language, whatever it is. But this document that you see, the red line document, so part of the process is we work with NCDOT on all of the red lines. They review it before we bring it to you so that we know that if you choose to approve it, we won't send it to them and they say, well, wait a minute, we need this change. They have already blessed this version as an adequate draft should you choose to take action. Now, as part of the program that we have in the federal standards, the MTC is designated as our equivalent authority, and that is in the definitions, and that's why this comes to you when there are changes for your ultimate approval. That's why we do that. It's part of the process. And really think about the ASP as part of a safety management system, or SMS. This is a critical part. It defines and guides us for how we approach safety as an agency and work with NCDOT and FTA.
Thank you.
Yeah, in your packet too, you should have a copy of the conditional approval letter. Our process does not allow us to bring this document to you for your review and approval until we have that conditional letter.
Yes, it's included in the materials that were sent. Okay, so any other questions, comments, thoughts? Well, I know that we had the document and the material sent to us, but I also saw where the NCDOT letter was there. So are you prepared to have a motion to approve the CAT Agency Safety Plan Revision Number 3?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Hearing none. All in favor, please raise your hands. All the voting members, please raise your hands. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, it is quite a mammoth task to go through this, and redlining is really good, but this one was more like bleeding rapidly. So.
The other thing I'll point out is we've had an ASP as part of our SMS program for 3 years now. And as David mentioned, we're on revision 3. It's very normal. Next year, I would anticipate bringing revision 4 forward. It's a living document. It should change. It should not be static.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cagle. All right, so now we'll hear from our Transit Services Advisory Committee. I think Mr. Herms is going to provide us the report.
Thank you. Thank you. So this month we met following Beyonce Wednesday, or Bay Day, or when the Beehive enclaved onto Uptown. But so first we received a CEO update from Brett Cagle. Let me just first start by saying we are very much appreciative of Mr. Cagle coming in for these monthly updates. So we first started to talk about the gold line frequency, which you guys have been made aware of, to move from 20 minutes to 30 minutes. He had also mentioned when it comes to there being about I'm not saying in a pejorative way, the aggressive nature in terms of hiring, making sure that we're bringing in operators for both rail and bus, which is increasingly good. He has mentioned that that morale has improved in the past couple of months. Obviously, still not a trend, but that does sound relatively promising. And of course, he had also mentioned that there's the 4 to 5 month timeline as far as getting everyone trained. I did want to remark that, so from a hiring perspective and the process standpoint, this is definitely very good when it comes to, as Mr. Cagle mentioned, a good transit system needs to have good both reliability and frequency. So this is definitely a good step in terms of the reliability standpoint. From the frequency standpoint, I do encourage you guys to just remember that we are getting the reliability part well, but we need to definitely improve on the frequency part, which of course is part of the goal with all the hiring. Which I will continue to say keep up the work and on that part. We had Lashika Williams talk about the QR code update. So there's been a good amount of satisfaction associated with the QR code along the Central Ave Route 9 corridor. As someone who lives along the corridor, it's definitely been very helpful as far as providing good information. lot of comments from us TSAC members did include things such as having a kind of a static website as kind of a side-by-side, kind of similar to Marta, for if in the event your phone is not able to pull up the actual app itself, just a bit of a backup, just making sure that you get the most people with the most access to the schedule and everything. And then and last but not least, we talked about the work with Keith Sorensen, our bus stop planner, with one of our TSEC members, Tim Spaulding, who's our disability representative, and talked about kind of working with the blind community with obviously using transit and making sure it's more accessible. They brought up a lot of good ideas, such as a kind of QR code on steroids, is kind of like a beacon for a smart app kind of beacon for those who are kind of visually impaired and trying to find a bus stop. So a lot of pretty good ideas on there. So I definitely want to applaud both of them for working together, and as well as Tim in general for being an excellent member of TSAC. So that is pretty much it for my update. Thank you.
Any questions for our Transit Service Advisory Committee? All right, thank you. Mr. Parker has come in, and I don't know if you have a report in our communications, so I want to just give you a moment to give us any information that you think we should be aware of.
No, ma'am. CTAG is still currently on our summer hiatus, to be returning, I guess, September, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that's correct.
So hopefully have a report for you next time.
All right, thank you very much for coming in and listening, especially to the reports about safety and those issues. So really, I think that this really concludes our meeting. Unless there are comments that the members would like to share, Mayor Bales, Mayor Simmons, Mayor Edwards?
Me?
Yes, I said if you have anything you want to share. Okay. Commissioner Altman?
Thank you. Mr. Cagle, I think I probably know the answer to this, since we have to reduce lead times and reduce frequency to ensure that we can be reliable. But I did want to ask you, with CMS about to start, and I think they're like 80 bus drivers short, has there ever been a conversation between you, well, probably not you, because you've only been in the seat a little while, but are you aware of any efforts around collaboration, to pool resources? Again, I assume it's not possible since we're short and they're short, so pooling, is not going to help anybody, but I wonder if that conversation has ever been undertaken.
Yeah, what I would say is we're always open to conversations with CMS. There are some limitations in how we would operate, and if there were the ability for us to sort of share operators, we're willing to talk about that, but we're always willing to talk to them about it. What I do think is there has been some conversation about access passes, all access passes for CMS students. That's not something that we've done yet or that CMS has wanted to pursue, but we're always open to having conversations to see how we can collaborate for successful outcomes.
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, thank you for that.
I had a conversation with the vice chair of the school board around the same thing. There are some issues around it, and being able to, do this is something that we would want to, but several years back, there was an entire conversation around how do you merge, or is there an opportunity? And what happens is that the regulations and rules are very different, children versus adults, where you can go and how far and who's accountable. So I think it would really require almost like a task force way in advance. We're in the moment now, but I think it would be really something that we'd have to do more work around. The operators are probably good, but I think the difference is the passengers and the routing and the safety concerns that are there. But we have had contact with the school, or at least I have had contact with the school system around the idea, what about high school students? And often that's not the issue as much as the middle school and the elementary school students.
And we do have policies around unescorted minors or children, you know. So as the mayor said, there probably are opportunities for older CMS students to utilize transit as a means. Younger, it becomes a little more difficult, unescorted, without a parent.
The discounted pass for our college students, is that available for our high school students?
So again, we have not had any high schools approach us on that, and we'd certainly be willing to talk to any high schools about that, because the short answer is yes, we could make that. We'd be willing to talk to them about making it available.
Because, yeah, maybe if we can free up buses for high school students through CATS, those could be repurposed for the younger grades where, you know, they can't get on CATS. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, any other comments for the group? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn and a second?
So moved.
Yes, we do. Thank you very much. It's unanimous.